Washington State. It's ranked 10th in the nation for growth, known for its grunge music and rainy weather. So why are so many people moving here? Stick with us as we are brutally honest about the pros and cons of living in Washington. Let's jump right into our pros, which brings us to our first pro, natural beauty. Of course, this is the first thing that comes to mind when people think about Washington State, but really, I just don't know of another area in the country where you have ocean, islands, mountains, and desert all within a couple of hours of drive. The Washington coastline is pretty flat, long sandy beaches for the most part, but once you get to the tip of the Olympics, it really turns into beautiful beaches with rock sculptures in the ocean. You have to hike into a lot of those places, but it's absolutely stunning. Our mountain range that runs north to south from border to border has several volcanoes, including Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Adams. And then once you get to the other side of those mountains, you are in desert. Now, it is very dry in this area, but you're not going to find cactuses. But what a lot of Washingtonians really enjoy is not only is there desert, but there's a lot of water recreation. So we've got the Columbia River that runs all the way through the state, and then there's multiple lakes and reservoirs. So it brings the sunshine, which brings in a lot of boating. The San Juan Islands usually aren't talked a lot about when you talk about Washington State, but they're really kind of a forgotten beauty. There's over 170 islands, and they are kind of their own little world. Once you go out there, it's very slow pace of life. The Puget Sound, it is saltwater, but because it doesn't get the rolling waves, it makes a great spot for fishing, crabbing for Dungeness, shrimping. We see a lot of kayakers that will kayak to some of these remote islands and camp overnight. There's luminescence in the fall, which is absolutely stunning. The San Juan Islands is worth a trip in its own. Because the landscape in Washington State is so diverse, there's really an opportunity for any type of recreation that you're looking for, whether that's hiking and mountain biking or skiing. We've got great hunting. There is a lot of boating opportunities, which we touched on a little bit. The San Juan Islands is also a very popular spot for sailing. There's just no shortage in outdoor recreation. Our second pro today is why I think most people look at Washington State, and that is because we have no income tax. There's only a handful of states in the US that don't tax you on your income. This is such a huge benefit because anything that you make goes into your pocket. Now, of course, Washington State has to make money somehow, and they do that with a sales tax. Now, these sales tax can really range. The state average is 6.5%, but depending on which county you go to or which city you're in, it can range really anywhere between 8 and 10%. Now, this sales tax is pretty much on everything that you purchase with the exception of groceries and housing. But when you have those big ticket items such as a vehicle or furniture, it can really tack on a lot of money. So depending on your lifestyle, whether you are a saver or a spender, the taxation, the way that Washington State taxes people should really be something that you take into consideration. Our third pro today is the economy. Now, Washington State does not tax corporations, and this is what makes the economy in Washington boom. We've got some major businesses here, including Microsoft, Amazon, Costco, Boeing, Weyerhaeuser, Starbucks. And the businesses just keep on coming. Washington State is a great spot to look for a startup because you save a little bit of money in that corporate taxation. Because of this, our job market is so strong and we have a very small unemployment rate. Wallet Hub ranks Washington #1 for economy, #2 for GDP, and #8 for economic growth. Number 4 on the list is my favorite, and that is wine country. Not a lot of people talk about this when they talk about Washington State, but Washington State is actually the second fastest growing wine producer in the nation. There are vineyards everywhere in eastern Washington. Chelan, Walla Walla, Leavenworth have hundreds of wineries that you can go and enjoy. Number 5 on the list is Washington State is very dog friendly. You might get shocked when you go into a restaurant or a brewery or even a store and you see dogs walking around everywhere. There are dog parks in all of the cities. We just love our dogs in Washington. Now that we've covered a couple of the pros, let's jump into the cons. The first con that we're going to talk about today is weather. And we all think of Washington as a very rainy place, but it's really divided into separate sections. You always hear people talk about how much it rains, but in the Seattle area, actually, there is what we call a rain shadow. So because the Olympic Peninsula and the Olympic Mountain Range blocks weather from coming across and hitting certain areas along the I-5 corridor, which includes the San Juan Islands, Port Angeles, and Seattle, we actually get a lot less rain than what you would think. Now, it's still a rainy state, and I'm pretty certain they invented Gore-Tex for people who live in the Pacific Northwest. But this is all pretty much just along that west side I-5 corridor. Once you get to the other side of the mountains in central and eastern Washington, it is all sunshine. In fact, eastern Washington gets over 300 days of sunshine a year, which is more than what Florida gets. No matter where you live in Washington, you can expect to get some snow. Of course, the closer you are to the coast, the less you're going to receive. The Cascades receives a lot of it. Some of our mountain-based areas register 400 plus inches a year. And then as you get into eastern Washington, you're still going to see snow, but probably around a foot or two throughout the entire winter. So that's usually just a few inches on the ground at a time. It's been said by some local Washington residents that the summers here are absolutely perfect. And I have to agree with them. Because we hover right around 80 degrees, it's never too hot and we don't have that East Coast humidity. So it's really easy to get outside and enjoy a hike or be in a swimming pool. The weather in summer is special. The second con that we're going to talk about is natural disaster. We'll just talk about the most recent, really big one, 1980 Mount St. Helens blew. It killed 57 people, destroyed 200 homes, and it took over 6 years for some lakes to recover. We do live in the Ring of Fire, and there are several active volcanoes in the state. So it's only a matter of time before this could possibly happen again. Beyond volcanoes, we have wildfires like crazy. The state experiences a lot of them, and homeowners are really being affected by the insurance policies. Depending on where your home is located, a lot of places are just completely getting dropped because these insurance companies don't want to take on the risk of wildfire. Coastline, you obviously can assume possible tsunami depending on where your home is located. And then also going back to that Ring of Fire, earthquakes is a very big risk and probably one of our more common natural disasters that we have. Number 3 on our list goes back to talking to weather, and that is sad, seasonal depression. Even though I talked a little bit about how we don't get as much rain as you think, there is a lot of gray days, and this really affects people. A lot of people who live in Washington State will take vitamin D or have sun lamps in their home just to help with this. Number 4 on the list, cost of living. Washington State has gotten really expensive. We have the second highest minimum wage in the nation, which also means everything costs a little bit more, because when wages go up, who pays for it? The consumer. We are ranked 13th for highest cost of living. We're 11% over the national average, and home prices across the state is saying to be around $540,000. Now, anywhere in the metro area, you're looking at $1 million average, and then once you get out to the more rural areas, you can find homes in the 400,000. But housing costs is not cheap. Everything seems to be a little more expensive. When you go out to eat in the Seattle metro area, expect to pay $20+ for a hamburger. Gas is a lot more expensive than it is in the rest of the nation as well. And part of that is some of the taxes that they're putting on top of that. And for our very last con, we're gonna talk about the people. And it's not comfortable talking about this, but it is noticeable that people have a hard time making friends in the Washington area. Now, I don't know if this is because we hibernate so much, but people really keep to themselves. It almost feels like passive aggressive. One thing that you can do to get over that if you are moving to Washington State is find a hobby and get involved with a group. So if you can find people with like common interests, it'll be a little bit easier to meet new people in Washington. I want to hear from you in the comments. What did I miss about the pros and cons of living in Washington? I'm Amanda.Dallman, a local real estate agent, and if you're looking to move to Washington, give us a call and we'll get you connected with the right people.